Okay, I wanted to welcome everyone to Char's Landing in Port Alberni on beautiful Vancouver Island, British Columbia. And we're especially pleased to have so many guests from Ontario today. Yay, welcome, welcome. Applause, applause.
Yeah.
Yay. We have a nice crowd in here at Char's tonight, which is really pretty exciting because it's been pretty lonely here for a long time. But we're having all sorts of computer issues. Carl's computer's broken, so he's not on chat, and mine broke, but we're back on track. And I'm just going to say greetings to Derek, and please take us on our way to a beautiful night. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Char, and welcome everybody. Great to be back here. I was thinking today how many writers I've connected with through the Electric Mermaid over the last couple of years, and how great that's been. You know, it's been one of the highlights, I think, of the whole COVID lockdown, is that I've gotten to know a whole bunch of diverse writers, and it's just great. So, and all day I've just been looking forward to getting back together with everybody, and so nice to see everybody here. For those of you out in the Zoom land, we're Zooming to you from Port Alberni, which is on the unceded territory of the Sishat and the Hupatcheseth First Nations people. And we're grateful to their ancestors and to them for sharing their land with us here. And Port Alberni, for those who might not know, is right kind of smack dab in the middle of Vancouver Island. We like to call it the literary navel, at least for one night of the month of Vancouver Island. And Electric Mermaid, for those who are new here, well, the name comes from an actual work of art that hangs in the rafters at Char's Landing, which is also where we're zooming from. There's a Electric Mermaid called Luma, and I don't know if Char can flash a picture up there of her. That would be great. But anyway, it's to her we owe our name, and we're grateful for that. We're also grateful to Char for all she does to keep this Electric Mermaid running. She's the genius behind this. Yeah, let's give her a round of applause. So she does the Zoom, and she has her own Char's Landing venue there, which is live face-to-face, and thankfully getting back into full gear as of April the 8th, I believe, when the vaccine mandates drop, and everybody will be piling back in. There's a good crowd there already, but it's going to swell even more, I'm sure, next month. So thank you, Char, for all you do to keep this running, and thank you to Karl, our moderator, whose computer is down and will be, I'm sure, doing what he can. There he is. Hey, Karl. And thank you to Jackie Carmichael, our artistic director. I don't know if Jackie's, oh, there she is. She's live and in person with her mask on. Hey, Jackie. Thank you, thank you. Also to Micah Gardner, our photographer. I don't know if Micah's there tonight, but he helps us out artistically as well. So yeah, grateful to everyone, and of course, most grateful to our readers and our listeners who join us faithfully every month, or when they can make it, and it's all good. So yeah, we're a community of diverse writers, and we welcome diversity and inclusiveness. We welcome the celebration of the language and the beauty of Mother Earth and the diversity of community that lives on it. What we don't welcome is hate language. God knows there's enough division and hatred in the world. We come here together to share a little bit of love, love for the language, and love for good writing, and love for artistic endeavor at whatever level it's at, you know. So for those of you who might be listening, who write a little bit and might be shy about reading, don't be shy. Have a listen this time, and maybe next month you can sign up on the Char's reading list and share up to 5 minutes worth of your work with us. Would be great. So I think I've taken care of business, except for the one thing. I know the people there in person always drop their $10 in the jar for Char when they come in the door, but for those of you online, if you could throw a little money Char's way, that would help her. She's been having her back against the wall with COVID and everything, and so anything you can spare would be helpful. Just e-transfer at charslanding.com. is the place for that. And maybe somebody can throw that up in the chat, if not me, in a little bit here. Okay, so we're going to have a couple of just the open micers with the 5-minute time limit there to start us off. And then we're going to get into our featured readers tonight. And featured is Jennifer Wenn, who's zooming into us from all the way from Ontario, London, Ontario. Jen's a regular here and a really strong poet, so I'm sure you're going to enjoy what she has to share with us. And Yvonne Maximchuk is with us as well in person. She comes from the archipelago. What is it now? Oh my God. I had a senior's moment. The Broughton Archipelago. And Broughton Archipelago is so poetic. I think anybody who comes from there must be a poetic writer. So I'm really looking forward to hearing what Yvonne has to share with us after Jen. And then we'll go back to some open micers after that, and all should be said and done within an hour and a half to 2 hours or so. So settle back in your chair. For those of you who are in Char's, I hope you've already got your drinks at the table. And let's get started. So our first open mic reader tonight is going to be Joy Sheldon, who joins us from Cowichan. Joy, you are unmuted and the floor is all yours. Share your work.
Thank you very much, Derek. Can you hear me okay?
You bet so.
I found this in the computer the other day and I didn't remember having written it because it was written BC, before COVID. So it is called Tip Pot Dilemma. I edited it down considerably, and so it's within the 5 minutes, and it's subtitled The Art of Making Difficult Choices. When I order coffee at the 49th Parallel Coffee Shop in Ladysmith, I am thrust upon the horns of a dilemma. To tip or not to tip? That is the question. But worse yet, which tip pot to put the money in? Because there are two of them, two round-shaped white cups, and I have to make sometimes excruciating choices. They are usually an antithesis, but sometimes more subtle. I have tried to roughly categorize the ones I have seen and put them in alphabetical order. Artists, Michelangelo versus Rembrandt. Clothing, pea jacket versus windbreaker. Dogs, beagle versus poodle. Philosophy, Aristotle versus Socrates. Science, Bactrian camel versus dromedary. I think I'll have to look that one up on the internet. Singers, Bob Dylan versus Leonard Cohen. Transportation, trains versus planes. But they also had canoe versus kayak. So should that one have been recreational pursuits? Oh dear. And lastly, and most importantly, but then I'm prejudiced, writers, Fitzgerald versus Hemingway, and many other categories too mind-boggling for this older brain to remember. But some choices defy categories, such as vampires versus zombies, creepy creatures, alien elements, figments of somebody's sick imagination. Then there was Michelin Man versus Maytag Man, me not being entirely sure just what Michelin Man represents. Tires, hot air balloons, Zeppelins versus dishwashers. We also had, perhaps, pithy sayings, philosophical phrases. They were live long and prosper versus may the force be with you. That was a tough one. My drink of choice is a custom-made coffee misto for exactly $2.85. If I give the server a loonie and a toonie, I get a dime and a nickel back in change. Dilemma. What if I have two choices I see as exactly equal? One pot will get twice as much as the other. Robert De Niro versus Al Pacino. Of course, if the choice is clear, one tip pot gets the whole enchilada. At one time, I questioned the manager before he left for greener parts. Do you think that having those somewhat controversial tip pots result in more tips for your staff? He replied, yes and no. You see, always difficult choices. If the customers really like one choice, I think we get extra tips, Marilyn Monroe. But if they really hate a choice, Saddam Hussein, nada. I even heard one old fellow muttering in the lineup behind me one day. He faced Mike Tyson versus Muhammad Ali. Oh, I detest boxing. It's a blood sport and should be banned. I wouldn't give either one of them a tip. However, for most of us ordinary members of the coffee drinking hordes, that's in capitals, coffee drinking hordes, the tip pots present a unique, intellectual, but sometimes enigmatic start to our day. Witness the difficulty of the dilemma, happiness versus money. Now, on the one hand, the altruistic choice might be preferable, happiness, to the down and dirty money. However, does it not usually take a certain amount of money to ensure happiness? If I'm really traumatized with the excruciating nature of the decision, I may even filch through my purse for additional coin. For instance, to me, many of those gorgeous male movie idols are on a par. Movie stars ranking equally in my estimation. Cary Grant versus Clark Gable. Cary Grant versus Hugh Grant would similarly be a tough one, even though they're from different generations. Tom Selleck versus Clint Eastwood would be agonizing. On the other hand, country singers. I detest a heavy Western twang. Kenny Rogers versus Randy Travis. Kenny, with the lesser twang, would win out. Last week, I faced bridges versus tunnels. Had no trouble putting my entire 15 cents into bridges. Who wants to be stuck in a claustrophobic dark hole in the ground when one can be soaring high, looking down at a gorgeous ocean view? However, some days when the choices are unequal, the dime gets put in one, carrots, the nickel in the other, broccoli. These little pots have even addressed key issues faced by society, such as traffic control, roundabout versus four-way stop. And to finish off, there were other enigmatic categories. Witness, paper versus plastic. Hello, does that mean hauling out the old checkbook versus using a charge card? Or do they mean paper dishes versus plastic at picnics? Paper cups versus plastic cups? Paper cups for youngsters, says I. Plastic for oldsters, especially if styrofoam. They're thicker and don't burn our fingers as easily. Then there was Wayne Gretzky versus Steve Nash. Steve who? And to finish off, there have been choices that even defy my college degreed understanding. Hashtag versus pound key must have something to do with computers. I'll ask the grandson. The end.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, where would we be without those grandsons? Yeah, my stepdaughter is our go-to IT person. She can't move out. We won't let her because we'd be crippled. Totally.
Technologically crippled anyway.
Yeah, for sure. That was delightful, Joy. Thanks so much for starting us off there. Appreciate it. So yeah, that was a little round of applause there. Our next reader is going to be Kathleen, and she's coming to us from Gibson's Landing. Sorry for the surprise, Kathleen, but Victoria isn't going to make it, so you're the next one up there.
All right. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
That way you don't have time to get nervous, right? You just jump in.
No. So Billy and Ann and Mars have just been in to see the railway doctor, and they've just finishing up that visit, and Aunt Flossie and the dog Whoopsie have been out in the waiting room because they weren't allowed in the surgery. So just then they heard an awful yelping and Aunt Flossie shrieking, "Look at what you done, Oopsie Whoopsie. You sure is shooting in trouble now. Now I've got work to do. I've got to write this report for the railroad. And you children better go see what's happening out there," Dr. Graff said, and led Billy, Mars, and Ann out of her office. "Look at what Oopsie Whoopsie's done. Doctor's offices make Oopsie nervous, and that alligator bag standing on its own 2 feet scared the willies out of her. Now she's upchucked all over my dress. Come on, kiddos, we're going shopping," Aunt Flossie shrieked. Aunt Flossie led them to the downtown department store where she bought a beautiful red dress. "Tomato for a tomato," Aunt Flossie called it. She sometimes called women tomatoes and Eddie a potato. You're forgiven, oopsie whoopsie, now that I've got a ritzy new tomato red dress, Aunt Flossie whispered to the dog, which she had hidden in her shopping bag. It was when they were going down in the store elevator that Anne saw it. At first, she couldn't believe what she was seeing. A man had taken a pair of scissors out of his coat and was cutting off the hair of the woman standing in front of him. The woman didn't move. Her hair must have been so long, she didn't even feel it being cut. Anne poked Mars and Billy and pointed at the man with the scissors and at the woman with the cut off hair. Just then the elevator door opened and the man and the woman started to leave. Wait, Anne screamed. That man just cut off that woman's hair and pointed to both of them. We saw it, Billy and Mars both yelled as loudly as they could. The woman stopped, put her hands to the back of her head and screamed. The man ran. He thought he could escape, but he didn't know about oopsie whoopsie. Aunt Flossie opened her shopping bag. Go get him, oopsie, Aunt Flossie shrieked, and oopsie took off after the man, yelping all the way. By the time Aunt Flossie caught up with them, oopsie had the man's pant leg in her teeth. Hand it over, Aunt Flossie ordered. I don't know what you're talking about. What's your beef with me? That your dog? Tell her to get her paws off of me or I've got your number and you're a wrong number. I'm no weak sister. I'm no pushover. You've nicked that woman's hair. Gonna sell it, weren't you? Well, hand it over or I'm calling the coppers and they'll put the bracelets on you. You follow? Try to give me a bum steer. Forget about it, Aunt Flossie shrieked. All right already, hold your horses and call off that dog, the man shouted as he reached into his jacket and pulled out the woman's hair. Aunt Flossie grabbed the hair. Then she told oopsie whoopsie to let go of the man before oopsie got rabies or something. The man disappeared into the crowd of shoppers. Aunt Flossie put oopsie back into her shopping bag. Here's your hair. You had beautiful long dark hair, but if you listen to me, you'll get yourself a bob. You can go to a barber shop or one of them new beauty parlors. Honey, you better ask for a shingle bob. That's the one that's real short at the back of your neck on account of you don't have much hair back there now. But first you want to sell that hair that man tried to nick to steal off you. You'll get a lot of money for it, enough money to put you in the duck soup. Cheer you up, Aunt Flossie told the woman as she handed over the hair. Back at Aunt Flossie's house, there was special baby food pudding for oopsie whoopsie's funny tummy, peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, and Shirley Temples for Anne, Mars, and Billy, and gigantic hugs for everyone. You kids are such wise heads. Always watching for stuff. If you hadn't yelled, that poor woman would never have known what had happened till she got home and discovered her hair was mostly gone. You're the caterpillar's kimono. The turtle's neck, Billy said. The flea's eyebrows, Mars said. It takes the cake, Anne said. The pie in the sky, Aunt Flossie, Anne, Mars, and Billy all said together. The end.
That was great, Kathleen. Thank you. And I'll add the bee's knees for your story. That was great. Excellent. I love Aunt Flossie. She's a fabulous character. How's the rewriting going anyway? You getting progress?
Chapters 1 and 2 are completely rewritten and chapter 3 is halfway there.
Excellent.
So I'm very happy.
Excellent. Good on you. Okay. All right. We're going to move on to a featured reader now. We had, there you are, Jennifer. Good to see you again. So Jennifer is coming to us, as I said earlier, from London, Ontario, my old hometown. And I'm going to read off your little bio, if that's okay with you, because I don't want to miss anything too important here, and I don't trust my memory these days. So Jen is a trans-identified writer and speaker from London, Ontario. Her first poetry chapbook, A Song of Milestones, has been published by Harmonia Press. She has also written From Adversity to Accomplishment, A Family and Social History, parts of which I've heard and are fabulous, and published poetry in Word City Literary Journal, the Stratford Quarterly, Belleville Review, Journey of the Heart, the Ekphrastic Review, Watch Your Head, Open Minds Quarterly, Tuck Magazine, among others. I won't read the whole list, but obviously well published in a whole variety of strong literary journals, so that's great to see. And she also happens to be the proud parent of 2 adult children. We'll maybe put your website in the chat there for those who might want to visit you and have access, I take it, to your books and things that way if they'd like.
Yeah, that's correct. The book's available there, and there's videos and links to published poems and all sorts of other things on there.
Perfect. All right. It's somebody kindly already popped that up there.
Yeah, I popped it in there, so
super.
it's there.
Thanks, Jennifer. All right, I'm going to turn it over to you, and going to give us 10, 15 minutes, and then maybe we'll have a bit of time for a Q&A afterwards. It'll be wonderful.
Okay. Yeah, it's like 15. Okay. Thank you very much. Hello to everybody out west. Thank you for having me. I was going to read bits of 3 different things. One of the things I do is I write either cycles or maybe the odd extended piece. It gives me a little bit more room to stretch out, I guess. And so that's where all 3 of these, the sections come from 3 different ones. The first one is one that Derek mentioned in passing. The extended piece is called Bernardo Boy, and it's based on that family history that I've done. My paternal grandfather, having been a home child, was sent to England when he was 11 to be an indentured servant, ostensibly an orphan. He wasn't technically. Very complicated story. And I have tried to outline it in this extended piece. It's a little under 1,300 lines, the whole thing. So it is a longer one. It's split into a prologue and 16 cantos, and I'm going to skip over the prologue and just do cantos 1 and 2 from this one. And I should mention that they weave back and forth. The pieces sort of intertwine. The odd ones are my search, basically, and the even numbered ones are more like the actual history. And in number 2 here, his parents are about to meet is where you get to at the end of that. So number 1, carefully preserved aging snapshots in my mental photo album, exuding still poignant life and meaning, a tall laughing presence, grandpa to me, open face and ostentatious nose, social partner in his household, raking leaves for leaping grandchildren, fishing with buddies and family, then happily and masterfully filleting when all others demurred, gleefully sharing Andy Cap, lovable comic strip layabout, reawakening Northeast English childhood memories. Just once did the eyes cloud and the gleam waver, a silly quiz inflaming painful memories of an education denied, turning the page, glancing up, finding a sunset stealing in. 2. A tale of 2 towns, Yarmouth the first, east coast mouth of the River Yare, an island transformed to peninsula paralleling the North Sea, straddling Norfolk and Suffolk, and straddling economies old and new. Herring port for a millennium, foremost in England, celebrated with a 6-week fair, object of Dickensian affection, town and tide mixed up like toast and water, perfumed with fish and pitch and oakum and tar, narrow lanes echoing with the thwack of shipwrights and clang of forges, and soaring above all, the great church of St. Nicholas, which saw the trawler boom come, then go when the railway opened up, thrusting Grimsby closer to the fishing grounds, which gazed on as early tourists discovered Yarmouth's seaside charms. Dangling just over the River Bure, 44 acres of land and 3 of water, known as Run and Vauxhall, home to manure works, fish offices, lower rates, and Molly, with baby Freddie and a husband fighting consumption's onset, her need for a job answered by a helping hand from family friends to the north. And so, leaving husband and child with in-laws, she found herself in 1908 alone on the road to bustling Grimsby. Founded by Grim, a 9th century shipwrecked Dane, first dwelling fashioned from his vessel's remains, first fishing port in England, after 300 years, forced into centuries of hibernation by a silted harbor. Then came the magical 19th century, harbor reborn, a railroad lifeline, huge new fish landing pontoons, 23 acres of docks, a meteoric rise ensuing, plateau, and slow decline over the horizon. Airy yet plagued with rising sewage when the tide was in, to some eyes clean and boasting a lovely park, to others a sullied jumble of hovels, prosperous homes, timber yards, and a welter of shops. Workaday focused on the port, boasting a mile-long covered roof, the largest fish market in the world, serving 100 trawlers at once, redolent of tons of fresh catch, ringing with the auctioneer's cries. Home to Henry Mays's fish factory, Molly's destination. Home to Albert, trawlerman and dock worker, scion of the Mays family with 2 sons, young Harry and little Albert Jr., and an estranged wife, site of a fateful, destined encounter. The second thing I'm going to read from it, I've read a number of sections from this before. Auschwitz Threnody, I'm going to do one, not terribly long one tonight. And the one I chose was well, I'll just say that it has resonance with events over in Europe these days. There was a certain resonance here for me. This cycle was a reaction to having visited Auschwitz back in 2005. And it's there are 17 poems in the cycle. This one is the 8th. When you're visiting the museum and memorial, one of the things they have is a display, a series of display cases of things that were stolen from the victims, those about to be murdered. One of them had luggage pieces, and that's where this comes in. It's called Petter's Suitcase, and trigger warning, there are some difficult images in this piece. Confronted with the luggage bin, each relic carefully labeled, destruction's data points, from the reverently jumbled multitude of ransacked wishes and lives, nestled near Marie and Irene, Herman and Clara, one battered and broken dream case pulled me in. Peter Eisler, born March 20th, 1942, superfluously labeled Kinder, child. Transported here, I was told, May 1944, final palindromic identity 6446, daubed on twice for emphasis. Staring in 2005 at your fractured holdall and remembering it now, a cloud of questions swirls, plaintive and insistent. Who were you? Born in the midst of war, hope and life breaking through death and despair, a family favorite, one would think, possibly with one special toy. Perhaps you walked and talked early, or maybe took toddlerhood at a leisurely pace. The pain of second molars and night terrors assuaged by Mama and Papa's gentle ministrations. No doubt you learn no, and most especially why. A child of violence and deprivation, turning an ingenuous, immaculate gaze on the world's madness and agony, even as its deadly currents flung you here. The train ride I can't imagine, sardined into a near airless tin, infused with vomit, urine, and feces, bodies dropping like autumn leaves, starving, desperate for water, eventually disgorged onto that haunted platform. The vision pulls me deeper, and those questions keep flooding over me. Were the bustling zebraed enslaved scarecrows reassuring? Did you have a teddy bear quickly plucked from your grasp? How you must have wondered and quailed in the shadow of the looming demonic uniforms. Did you wail, causing one to pick you up and silence your cries with a whirl against an immutable boxcar? Or were you as soundless as a tomb? Were you separated from Papa, who was swept away shouting your name? Did Mama tell you this was all a new game? Did the billowing shower speedily put you to sleep? Perhaps, horrific thought, they ran low on insecticide and pitched you screaming straight into the flames. Or maybe you choked and fought to the last, trying in vain to wake up Mama. Forever just 2 years old, what might you have become? This world will never know, but you entrusted us with your fleeting journey that flickers through a burst suitcase and quietly beseeches those passing by. Rest in peace, Peter. Thank you. The last two pieces are from my chapbook, Song of Milestones, which traces my gender journey as a transgender woman. Each of the 11 different pieces in the cycle has a literary touchstone as a foundational referent. And the first piece, the past is prologue, Shakespeare, if you remember The Tempest and so on. So he's kind of my helper, if you like, there. And it is my transition to a full-time female presentation, as you'll hear. The next one jumps on a bit. The last thing I'll do is called Forth a Butterfly. It picks up immediately after my gender confirmation surgery, and Emily Dickinson is who I am leaning on there. So the past is prologue. Like a germinated flower pushing through soil and detritus, seeking light, seeking to join garden's panoply, I yearn for revelation, for acceptance, celebration, for joining, but with my own special colors, long dormant feminine battling boundaries, frustrated by custom's suffocating necessities, oft required male shell's veneer, increasingly thin. At intervals, the inner bloom unveiled, only to find her beauty lost on some, loving labor over a finery all for naught, sinking under the dead weight of macho pronouns, shrinking from cruelties careless and intentional, subtle and vicious. But oh, those glorious times when someone glimpsed the fragile rose, nurtured the delicate spirit with simple nourishment, she, her, ma'am, times that shielded, times that elicited a gentle yet destined flourishing. And inexorably, an inevitability took hold. The bard spoke true. The past is indeed prologue. All before leads to the defining moment. But here was enjoying not a murder on a tempest-tossed island, but a torch passing. Male persona honored, but fading inward, seeking rest and integration. True identity's unquenchable flame, transcending imposed role, transcending body, transcending all. Thus, an era's end, masculine name and dress forever in the past, a turning of the tide, mourned, yes, but embraced in trepidation and hope and faith and surrender, the scared, confused little girl of so long ago released, a caged bird at last stretching her wings, finally, wondrously, a woman claiming her time to be born aloft, proud and free. And the last one then, Forth a Butterfly. And this is dedicated to my son, Andrew, for reasons that will become obvious in a minute. From cocoon forth a butterfly, as lady from her door emerged a summer afternoon, repairing everywhere. But pause and linger over Emily's first line. What drama, what struggle and triumph lie lurking there. Clawing through anesthetics, entangling vines into a clearing, a hospital room, on my back, claustrophobic, suffused with morphine, hydromorphone, fentanyl, slowly pulsating sleeves around my legs, forcing blood to flow and not clot, tubes dripping into each arm, one of them battling narcotic nausea, oxygen wafting up my nose, operations position having shaken loose those damn crystals in my left ear and viciously spun my world. Midsection remodeled, packed, bandaged, and catheterized. And there at my side, taking on a role beyond his 21 years, my son, comforting, reporting the blade's wondrous work, priceless aid by mere presence. This event's numerous names of power embedded in shades of meaning, sex change, older, pejorative, sensationalistic, sexual reassignment surgery, gender reassignment surgery. But I am not reassigned, I simply am. Gender confirmation surgery. Yes, this I claim, confirmation of the innate, the portrait internal. Hazy reflections dissolve while around me a triad of ethereal Prometheus moths weave a fiery triple helix of pain. One skein the present, now breaking through the opioidic barrier, and my constant companion for numerous weeks to come. Heavy pelvic-wide throbbing, piercing movement-triggered paroxysms, electric cattle prod jolts of reconnecting nerves. Another strand, pain past, tortured soul, tearing the foreign physique, entombing it, inducing one condition after another. Memories, yes, but ones that left a legacy of permanent scars. The last, pain conjectural, body and spirit tormented beyond limit, falling into a crypt-dark abyss, a nightmare vision now never to be realized, but the specter always hovering nearby, whispering reminders of what might have been. The vertiginous miasma fades and reveals gradual healing around my surgical resurrection, finally permitting a glorious vertical interval, an assisted geriatric shuffle through the hallways, and soon out the door and off to convalesce at the bed and breakfast. But tendrils of night grasp at my dawn, leaving a residue of nocturnal fear, trauma past, gradually wiped away by time and Andrew's nearness, an unpayable debt incurred. After an instantaneous eternity, another checkup and first unveiling, still swollen, still misshapen and inflamed, but nonetheless beautiful. The mirror at long last reflecting true, the little girl finally seeing herself in the most intimate way possible. Onward to the pilgrim's return trek from a transgender Lourdes, one figure waddling like a crippled penguin, portable padded donut seat always at hand, the other sprouting all manner of baggage. By car, a fortuitous lift from a shuttered rental agency, 2 trains punctuated by an overnight hotel, and then the stretch run down the 401, home to an unhurried recovery of body and spirit, home to a dilation-filled routine, necessary maintenance of my virgin anatomy, discovered day by day like a newborn, exploring the wonder of her hand. Summer afternoons outside, soaking up new life, like a butterfly basking on a rock, seeking the warmth to take wing. Prometheus moths banished bit by bit, and the helix dissolved, but for a deeply tattooed imprint. Return pilgrimage 7 weeks out, daughter my invaluable companion this time, affirmation received, and home again, to reconnect with life, to grapple with the growing, inescapable reality of success. And so look there, over by the evening primrose, as one lone lady at long last struggles out of her cocoon and apprehensively, determinedly, wistfully, wonderingly, finally, repairs forth in search of union with afternoon's precious, ebbing incandescence. Thank you.
Wow, Jennifer, wow, wow, wow. That was Powerful, very powerful. I mean, all your work is very powerful, but that last piece I think was the best for me.
Thank you.
Just kudos to you for the courage, man, woman, to be yourself and to share that journey with people so intimately and personally. And I just can't help but think how helpful that is in this time, that those sorts of truths need to be told, that people can come to understand, and there can be more and more and more acceptance and allowance for people to be who they are. That's all we're
Thank you.
asking, right? Beautiful, thank you. So I'm going to open it up for questions if anyone has any questions they'd like to ask Jennifer. I guess the people in person there can pop up to the mic there, or I don't know. Jackie's on the chat there. She could always throw it in the chat for you if you don't want to come online, and I'll pick it out of the chat. So,
Yeah, I see one there. Jennifer, how did you start to write poetry? I'm not sure if that's the first one. That was Karl.
Okay.
Yeah, it was very sudden. I didn't write a poem in my life until the summer of 2017. So I'm a little less than 5 years in writing poetry. I'd always wanted to do something creative, but I never could. I never found my voice. And I wasn't able to find my voice until after I transitioned. And once I had transitioned, I was much more of a whole person. And that mattered because I was missing a huge chunk of who I am. And I was missing, the feminine part. I was missing a lot of the creative stuff too. And it was, that being the case, it was a confluence of circumstances. A good friend of mine is Pen Kemp, who some of you may have heard of, a wonderful poet, London-based. And I got to know her, and I saw a beautiful exhibit on mystical landscapes, and read the catalog. And I got thinking about all of this, and Carmana Walburn, which I know a lot of you folks will know really, really well out there. I had seen that some years before, and I was so struck by the place, and still am. And so I just took it in my head, well, I should write a poem about this. Why, I don't know, but I did. And then I was off. And poetry, there are some things I find you can only do with poetry. I've described my gender journey in prose, and I still do. I've addressed the med students at Western University in London 6 times or something as part of their transgender health unit. But the only way I could find to try and pull anybody inside me and try to give an interior view of, what it might be like, or at least attempt, was poetry is the only way I found that I could try and portray that.
Beautiful. Joy was wondering where you developed such an excellent vocabulary.
I read a lot, and I am one of those poets that does use a thesaurus. Some people say, well, you shouldn't. Well, I do. I mean, I really try hard not to use anything I don't know or recognize, but I find it a great tool to, come up with things. And so I'll spend time leafing through and all that sort of thing. But yeah, apart from that, yeah, I read a fair bit.
Yeah. And it shows, absolutely, yeah. And I mean, Sylvia Plath, they said her thesaurus had all kinds of words underlined and double underlined, like she had been through her thesaurus over and over again.
Well, there you go. And if Sylvia can do it, then I can do it.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Poetic license to use a thesaurus, I think. Yeah. Totally.
There you go.
Any other questions out there? Yeah, I'll just jump in. I just see your work as such a thorough search into the self. I mean, not just in terms of your gender identity, but you've researched and gone into your family history as well, so that your knowledge of yourself is thorough, right? And that's more than many people arrive at the end of their life with. That's for sure. They're still a mystery to themselves, and they have no idea about their families. So. You've got it all covered.
Well, thank you. And I love history, and it's wonderful being able to leverage it. I mean, Bernardo Boy is the biggest example, but far and away not the only one. When I did Auschwitz Threnody, I mean, I visited there, but I did a ferocious amount of research. I read and thought about it and did other things for about 2 years before I even wrote anything. And then there's other pieces, one-offs that I have. So yeah, that matters to me, and I guess history of the self too. That, yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, I was going to ask that. I unmuted? I was going to ask that about research, because I noticed, like, the first piece you had worked in all what I think was a result of research, and it was so I don't know, unobtrusively, somehow it was so organically done. And I was sort of interested. So you have done a lot of research.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. For Bernardo Boy, I mean, that was based on the family history book that I did, which took about 40 years to do. And there was a lot of research there. I know my mom and my late dad spent a lot of time in the Church of Latter-day Saints Family Research Center to find things like birth certificates. And there was, corresponding with family, but in that particular piece, that was secondary source research. I mean, once I knew where people were, and you've got certificates, and so you put things together between certificates and census returns and all of that, and then you start going through a great big huge pile of books, and you make notes. And then so I had all that, and so then you just pick and choose and weave it in. And the same thing with the Threnody. You get all the background, and then you work it in as you need to.
Yeah, I suppose, but somehow it came alive.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. That's always the goal.
Well,
you have to have the emotion. I mean, you have to have the emotion and the feeling. I mean, that's got to be the primary thing. And if I'm setting out to write a piece, whether it's a haiku or whether it's a big one, there always comes a point where there is an idea. Like, I can't do anything until I've got the concept. Once I got the concept, I know it's all there, and it will take a certain amount of effort to extract it and bring it to life. But I have to have that sort of, that something, that initial starting point that's often emotion based before I begin.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jennifer. And thanks for the question, Kath. Appreciate that. That's great. All right. I think we're going to have to move along, and maybe if we get some time later on, we can have some more questions. We'll see how the time goes, but much appreciated, Jennifer. That was wonderful reading. All right, our next, some applause. Our next reader coming up to the mic now at Char's Landing is Yvonne Maximchuk, and welcome to Char's Landing, Yvonne.
Thanks, Derek.
Great to have you here in beautiful downtown Port Alberni.
Great to be here. Yeah, I'm supposed to look at the,
You have to come a little closer to the mic there. Can you come a little closer to the mic?
I don't know. Somebody will help me. Char will help.
There we go. There we go. Always got to have the tech support. Perfect.
Hello, Derek.
There we go. I've got you now, Yvonne. That sounds great.
Oh, good.
Yeah. So welcome, and we're just really delighted to have you here sharing your work with us. It's a real treat. And you look so familiar. Did we meet somewhere? We've crossed paths somewhere, but don't ask me where. Maybe through the Fed or something like that. I don't know. Anyway, we're just really happy to have you here, and I want to just share a little bit of your bio with everybody before you get started, if that's okay. And again, forgive me for reading it, but I don't want to miss anything. So Yvonne is the author of Murder Rides a Gale Force Wind. How's that for a title? An Island Mystery. She authored 2 books with Bill Proctor, including Tide Rips and Back Eddies. Bill Proctor's Tales of Blackfish Sound and Full Moon Flood Tide. And Yvonne is a writer and artist who lives in the Broughton Archipelago, as I mentioned earlier. And I think we've got your website up. If not, we're going to make sure we get it up in the chat for a place that people can go to learn more about you and get your books, I'm sure. And hopefully you brought some along with you so people there at Char's can buy them at the end here if they haven't already. So I'm just going to turn it over to you, Yvonne, and let you have the stage. Mute myself, and got about, I don't know, 10, 15 minutes of reading. Then we'll do a few Q&As if that's good with you.
Yep, it's all good.
Awesome.
Okay, yeah, thank you, Derek.
Yeah.
I'm going to do all my thank yous before I begin to read. I want to thank Jackie Carmichael because she gave me an enormous amount of assistance and ideas and suggestions, which were well beyond the scope of what I thought I might get. So thank you, Jackie. And thank you, Derek, for your emceeing, and Karl and Char. It's my second time here at Char's Landing. My autobiography or memoir, I presented here at a reading in 2013, along with my daughter who brought out her new CD. So this is kind of fun to be back. I have, thank you. I have, as Derek mentioned, 4 books under my belt now, and he didn't mention my coloring book called Color the British Columbia Coast. And these are all published by Harbor Publishing or Caitlin Press, and I'm an artist and began my writing career by working on Full Moon Flood Tide with Bill Proctor after I went fishing up to Haida Gwaii with him. I've lived with my husband, Albert, who, thank you too, honey, for making this journey with me. So we have lived in the community of Echo Bay in the Broughton Archipelago for 35 years. And it's an Indigenous, non-Indigenous community, very small, all boat oriented. And it's kind of like there's a social contract. You don't always like your neighbors, but if anyone needs help, you help them. So I began to think when I wanted to write a novel about what would happen if, somebody didn't really kind of follow that social contract. So as I only have a few minutes to read, and I was practicing, and Jackie said, read something that's kind of a cliffhanger, but doesn't give anything away, that's what you're going to get. And this is a little chapter, and there's a tiny bit of swearing at the end, so I hope that won't be offensive, between 2 characters, Benny, he's a prawn fisherman, and Tim, who is the prawn checker. And my husband actually used to be a prawn fisherman, so he and another friend who is also a prawn checker gave me lots of good info. So here they are. Tim was gearing up for his visit with Benny, leaning into the mirror over the sink in the tiny head in his liveaboard. He carefully drew the razor along his jaw. Finishing the shave, he slapped on some aftershave, then washed it off with a couple splashes of water. Mostly, he was used to dressing up for fine dining with women. Not that necessary to get all dressed up to eat with Benny. He was nervous and not sure why. His dressing ritual calmed him as he looked through the clothes in the hanging locker. Kind of felt like putting on armor. Bunch of fuss for no damn good reason. He wished it was Saturday so he could be dressing up for Kit. Good thing he had a lot of prawn boats to catch up on, or he'd be going crazy waiting for the days to pass before he could see her. He'd got it all worked out, what he'd cook for her. Caesar salad, a nice wine, butterflied prawns fried in butter, garlic, and soy sauce, sprinkled on at the hot finish. That hot finish would end the evening just right. Margaret popped into his mind then, the most recent hot finish he'd experienced. He saw her face, the way her eyes had glowed, golden in the candlelight, with tenderness and sorrow. They lay entwined in her bed. He pushed her out of his mind. It's done, over. It has to be if he's to have a future with Kit. He was determined to have a future with her and vowed again to do whatever it took to make that happen. Reaching into the hanging locker, he fingered the new blue shirt he'd bought in the field store at McNeil, rejected it for the green and brown cotton plaid he'd worn on his date with Margaret. He'd saved the new one for her when he saw Kit. Tim indecisively pulled out his brown corduroy jacket, held it up. What is wrong with me? For Pete's sake, I'm going to eat with Benny. He felt more confident when he pulled on the jacket, slipped his feet into his go-to-town shoes, and climbed into his skiff. Tim looked around at the scenery as he motored out of Wakana Bay. He liked the anchorage here. It was beautiful, protected, shielded from view. Some of the anxiety he had been feeling lifted as he focused his attention on the evening light and the colors of the passing scene. A few water birds puddled around by the shore, mummy mergansers with a string of babies. He watched them, smiling, until a sudden rush of wings signaled the swoop and clutch of an eagle, picking off the 9th and last baby merg. It was chilling when you saw that and realized how few baby birds survived to maturity. Tim shook off the shiver that rushed up his back and pushed the throttle forward. Dinner with Benny coming up. And Benny was friendly when Tim arrived, putting his best foot forward. Phew, what a day. Pretty hot, that's for sure, agreed Tim. Look at you all dressed up. That for me? Inquired Benny. Self-consciously, Tim stumbled. Of course not. I just like to get into clean clothes once in a while, even if it's not a woman I'm visiting with. Oh, yeah, like Kit, I guess. She's worth getting cleaned up for. Uh-huh. Tim was short. He didn't want to discuss Kit with his current host. Yeah, I had lunch with her a few days ago. She invited me over. Right away, Tim's hackles went up. Why would Kit have Benny over for lunch? He could just ask Kit, but that little green devil wouldn't leave him alone. Poked at him, inciting him to just ask. He resisted. Benny pulled a joint from out behind his ear and a lighter from his pocket. He raised the joint to his lips, thumbed the lighter, sucked until the sparks fired up. The warm scent of the burning joint distracted Tim from the voice. He reached for it as Benny exhaled and passed it over. Oh yeah, always good for what ails you. So true. So much comfort in lighting up a joint with someone, even if he had a complicated relationship with that someone. He and Benny went back a long way. They'd been around this neighborhood for 10 or 12 years, helped out with salmon enhancement, fished, partied together, and now, well, Benny's independent spirit bucked against Tim's role as the prawn checker. Plus, there was this new element that needed to be dealt with. But the joint mellowed the two men, and they talked about fishing for a while, the weather, and the other prawn boats. Benny rolled another, and the marijuana haze thickened in the cabin. Tim looked out the window. The sky was bluing deeper into indigo, while paler blue clouds appeared to be stuck here and there on the hills. The clouds over by Mount Reed began to look like a circus train. First, an elephant rolled slowly across the sky. The long trunk uncoiled and stretched up into a giraffe neck. The top of the giraffe neck and head turned pink in the late sun, and a big hippopotamus followed. Behind it, a couple of slinking cats. Then they shifted into a horsey gallop, long sprawling legs melting as they ran. Tim was transfixed. At long last, he relaxed into enjoying the evening in this fabulous show. He nudged Benny's foot with his, said with a chuckle, "Look at those crazy animal clouds. Do you see them?" Trippy man, aware he had dissolved into stoner platitudes. Benny looked and laughed right along with him. Far out, got the munchies yet? He pulled on oven mitts and opened the door of the oil stove, extracted a cast iron pot and placed it on the table. Tim was wide-eyed in amazement at Benny's coordination. Whoa, you didn't even spill a drop. or burn myself. Both found this hilarious and sputtered with laughter. Made you seafood stew, shrimp and crab and cod. Want to grab a couple bowls? Tim knew exactly where to find them. Benny plopped a loaf of bread on the table and a knife. Help yourself. Slurps and burps from hungry men while Neil Young sang in the background about a heart of gold. Benny offered a second bowlful. Tim accepted. So excellent, thank you. Quite a lot better than sardines and crackers. Is that what you usually eat? Guess that's why you're so skinny. Tim released a comfortable sigh and patted the round bulge of full belly, fumbled in his pocket. Guess it's my turn to roll up. I got a nice bit of Coke. Let's do that. I don't know, man. You sure it's not laced with something, fentanyl or whatever? It's fine, Tim. Don't be a wuss. Yeah, no, I'll just roll this one, then head out. Benny didn't reply. He cleared the dishes off the table and standing up in the alley between the table and the galley counter, he put the dishes in the sink. He threw a couple tea bags in the teapot and lifted the heavy kettle, poured the boiling water. He set the kettle back down on the hot stove and reached for a small cedar box from the shelf by the window. Tim watched as he took out $100 bill and a bag of white powder and carefully arranged them in front of him. With ritualistic movements, he sprinkled out a small amount of it, cut it with a razor blade, then carefully rolled up the bill. He blew out his breath and put the tube to his nose, and with a swift inhalation, sucked in half the powder. With one last, "You sure?" invitation, he looked up at Tim, who shook his head. Benny changed the tube to his left nostril and finished off the line. He turned on the cabin light, brought tea, offered canned milk and sugar, and poured both liberally into his own cup. Tim rolled his joint, lit it, toked deeply, and passed it to Benny. The sky was dark, the galloping clouds blending into the night sky. A few stars twinkled here and there. Getting late. The atmosphere had changed somehow, nothing abnormal when you're smoking and snorting. Uh-oh, thought Tim. He was hypersensitive, but calm, ready for anything. He hadn't forgotten that he and Benny had to talk. Have to talk. What a phrase. Better get it together. So, Benny, Tim began, I saw the RCMP sergeant in town before I came out. Benny interjected rudely. You fucking her? Jesus, man, what the hell? None of your business. Of course not. Well, what then? What are you doing with her? Talking, Benny, talking, if it's any of your beeswax. She told me there have been some problems, asked me to keep an eye out. Fuck you talking about? What kind of problems? Tim toked again from the smoldering joint and handed it back to Benny. Like I said, fentanyl problems, people dying or overdosing. Benny raised his eyes in disbelief. In the North Island? I don't believe you. It's not me, Benny. It's Margaret Morris, chief cop. She should know. It's here. Fentel's here. Some chick from St. Tula just died, and there's a fisherman in the Port Hardy Hospital. They got some naloxone into him quick enough. Well, what's that got to do with me? Jesus, Benny, don't be an ass. You, Tim pointed his finger emphatically, are dealing drugs. And you don't even know the guys you're getting it from or where it comes from or anything. Well, I guess that makes two of us, don't it? Drawled Benny carelessly. I suppose you never snooped around in White Bird's wheelhouse. Oh, is he in the same business as you? Well, with the risk going up like that, I kind of think my cut should go up. Maybe I'll see what he can cut me in for, Tim dared. Like a sea monster breaching, Benny erupted from his seat, face distorted with fury. Leaning across the table, he grabbed Tim by the shirt, pulled hard enough that the collar tore away from the shoulder seam. You greedy son of a bitch, you think you got me over a barrel, don't you? Well, let me share a thing or two with you. You try this shit on with Henderson, you'll be sorry. You don't know what you're messing with. Eyes compressed into tiny slits and spraying spit, he shook Tim back and forth, banged his head against the wall behind the galley bench. Tim grabbed at Benny's wrists, but he couldn't break the unyielding clutch on his shirt. Calm down, he shouted. Benny foamed at the mouth. He twisted his hands to grab Tim's and squeezed, felt the bones give. He dragged Tim out of the seat and pushed him against the blistering heat of the stove. Christ, Tim heaved himself sideways towards the door, grasped the knob with his good hand, turned it and flung it open. You're fucking nuts, man. You burned my hand. You broke my fingers. Tim fell out the door and Benny was above him, screaming about Kit. Yeah, well, let me tell you what your girlfriend's been doing. Ha, with me. Yeah, that's right. She let me in her pants and now I seen some other guy over to her place. Liar, liar, you fucker, Benny. You just can't leave anyone alone, can you? Bellowed Tim, but his bravado only got him a short distance across the deck. Hand throbbing mightily, Tim scuttled through the rail and fumbled with the tie-up lines as Benny rushed him. He leaped. That's it.
Beautiful. Thank you, Yvonne. That was great.
Thank you.
I love the way that that started so calmly and serenely and built and built and built and kept building to that wonderful climactic scene there. That was fabulous.
Oh.
Yeah, that makes everybody want to go out and buy that book, doesn't it?
I hope so.
Oh yeah. We want to find out what happened for sure. So let's open the floor up for questions. And again, anybody who's down on the floor there can, I don't know, maybe you can just ask Yvonne directly and I'll get you to repeat the question, Yvonne, so that the people on Zoom are sure to hear it.
Okay.
And then you can respond. That'd be great. And again, if anybody wants to throw anything in the chat, they can.
So Yvonne, why did you tackle fiction after you've done some other stuff like this? Obviously, it's a little bit of a departure from your other book, right?
Yes.
Going in this direction, a mystery. It sounds wonderful, by the way.
Thank you. Yeah.
Oh,
Do you want to repeat that, Jackie?
okay. All right. Yeah. So this is very thrilling, and I can't wait to read it. But I'm wondering what made you depart from your other kind of work. You have a beautiful coloring book, and the work that you did with Bill Proctor. What made you go to fiction and to a mystery, and is it fun for you?
That's a lot of questions. I'll start with the last one. Yes, it was incredibly fun. And also incredibly difficult compared to my memoir. My memoir was really easy because I just knew what I knew. And so the interesting part was trying to write it in an engaging way. And my coloring book was super fun because my first job was as a film animator, and drawing images of the West Coast was, art is fun. It's incredibly enjoyable way to live a life and make income. And the books I did with Bill, actually, I was fishing with him on the West Coast, and we were using Kathleen Dalzell's book to travel around Haida Gwaii and learn about where good anchorages were in history. And he is a man who has had no education, and but I learned a lot of what I learned about the Broughton from him. And so when he asked me to help him do a book like Kathleen's for where we lived, I was more than happy to. And that book became very successful. And yeah, then I did the memoir, then we did Tide Rips and Back Eddies, which was a follow-up. And then I did the coloring book, and I kind of, I don't know, I was like, been there, done that, what am I going to do next? And I like, stories. You hear bits and pieces. Walking down the street, you hear somebody walk by and they'll say something and it will strike you. And I've always made little notes. And I began to see after 30 years how people in the community interacted where I live. It's very small. And people take, they manage things themselves. They don't get outside and say, oh, help me deal with this. They're like, I'm just going to, do what I think is the thing that should be done here and take matters into my own hands. And so I began to think about, what would happen and explore these ideas in a novel. Yeah, if somebody broke that social contract, but it was really hard. So the easy part was keeping it in my setting, which I know intimately and have drawn and painted and explored, and yes, and then developing the characters was also enormously fun. People always want to try to make people in your book, be you or somebody else. And we just know what we know, right? We hear different things, we understand people's motivations. And if you know that and have an understanding about how the world works, metamorphosis happens, matter changes, coalesces, rearranges. That's what a book is. That's what I do.
All right, beautiful. Kathleen, I think, has a question for you too. Kathy, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just thinking after what you just said, it occurred to me, are you going to be in trouble with your neighbors? Because it's a small place.
Yeah, well, there's not very many neighbors. And I actually, if you get the book and read, the author's notes, which is often the very first thing I read when I read a book, I fully acknowledge the two people who gave me permission to channel them. Bill Proctor is a remarkable person, and not somebody, he would be very hard to make up somebody more interesting than him. And he actually had the idea for the names of two of the main characters, Back Eddie and Woody Debris. And so I asked him to create these characters as living people. So yeah, kind of channeled Billy and another neighbor. But everybody else, is total fiction, honestly.
Oh.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I guess so, as long as they believe it's total fiction.
Yeah, it is actually all entirely fiction. None of it really happened. Anybody else have a question? Yeah.
So is this writing what you know?
Yeah, I think so. I would say, yes, it's writing what I know. One of the things that happens in our lives is people have different attitudes. We're all dealing with sex and relationships and, Indigenous reconciliation and drugs and, how to live, how to be a good neighbor, ethical questions. So, yeah, it's not a trauma story or my life has been incredibly blessed and, privileged in so many ways. And, I appreciate that. Quite grateful. And I think people want to read something that's kind of just a good yarn, and explores the history and gives everybody a voice. Yeah.
Is a book available in Island bookstores? Now, I posted in here how you can contact Yvonne, right?
I have.
Just a minute, Yvonne.
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
Okay, so I have posted in the chat how you can get this from Yvonne, and you can do that by sending $31.50 will include the cost of mailing.
Yep.
And you have to send your address too, because that's like the other half of the thing, to crosestudio@hotmail.com. And if you want to check out her cool website, including her art, as well as more info about the book, you can go to Maximchuk.com, and it's spelled out in the chat there for anybody that wants to know how to spell that. It's Maximchuk. So it's YvonneMaximchuk.com. So my question then is, I know you've been doing some bookstore signings and stuff up and down the island. Are there some island bookstores you'd like to call out where it's available?
Yes, I had, this was also self-published, this book, after the other four being with Harbor Publishing and Caitlin Press. And I actually want to thank both of those publishers because I learned a lot. And yeah, everybody on their staffs are so professional and Yeah. So I had it printed at Island Blue Printing, and it's in bookstores, the Mulberry Bush in Cowichan, and help me out here, Al. Oh, Laughing Oyster, Blue Heron, Courtney Comox, Bonanza, Book Bonanza, Quadra Island, and Port McNeil, ShopRite at Home, and the drugstore, Cafe Guido's in Port Hardy. It's also, I've donated to Port McNeil Library and Sointula Library, and pretty soon. There's, you know, it's brand new, right? I actually sold out the first printing, so I know it's kind of thrilling, really thrilling.
How long have you been writing for?
Well, this is actually a really interesting question, because a friend of my mother's asked me that one time, and my mother rolled her eyes, and I was really like offended. And afterwards I asked her why she rolled her eyes. She's like, "You've been writing all your life." You know, complete opposite of what she meant. Anyway, so that was another learning experience. So that's my answer, pretty much all my life. Yes, but not with a target. You know, yeah, I thank Billy for, you know, actually helping me focus on a writing target. Yeah.
Oh, thank you so much, Yvonne. That was really really nice to have a little bit of chat afterwards, and wonderful to hear your writing and get a chance to get a little bit of the flavor of your book. And I think lots of people are going to hop out and pick up a copy after that. That was great. So thank you so much and especially thank you for coming live to Port Alberni and doing it face to face. That's a real treat too. Appreciate it.
Yeah, well, I want to thank everybody that made it here physically. This is the first night, apparently, right, Char, that you've been able to have people. And thank you to all the Zoomers for being here too. And thank you for your words, Jennifer. They're really profound. Yeah, and I think you're on the bottom picture, but I really enjoyed your story too.
Kathleen.
Thank you.
And
Okay.
just a reminder, if you are in the Port Alberni area and you want to hop over, there are some signed copies here still right now for sale, and you can catch a few more of the readers. So that's an idea for you. All right.
Bye. Thanks,
Thank you, Yvonne.
Thanks, Yvonne. All right, we'll pop back to some open mic readers now. And David Kipling has been waiting patiently there in Gibson's. What are you going to share with us tonight,
Well,
David? You got another story for us?
Not really patiently, because, you know, how do you follow these? Yeah. I once read an obituary of somebody, and they were polite throughout, and they did say at the end, it must be admitted that he found it difficult to enjoy the success of others. And so sometimes when I hear what's written here, I think that okay. And after, you know, I write, and people tell me, my friends tell me later on what it's about. So, you know, and they say, you know what that's about? And I say, no. And they tell me, and I say, oh my God, you're right. So here we go. After I'd done this, I think I'll say it was inspired by St. Valentine's Day and by International Women's Day. And so here we go. Shirley pulled the hem of her flannelette sheet round her chin, and when it tucked just so under her earlobes, and when a rib of a candlewick bedspread was snug between a finger and thumb, and if one or two sparrows outside her bedroom window were cheeping, this was paradise. Through her bedroom wall came the slow, quiet clink of someone making morning tea while others slept. Shirley lay still and tried melting by breathing out. Her singlet slid across her ribs. Tiptoe steps on the kitchen lino and the fridge door unsticking its lips. Shirley felt for the end of her blanket with her toes and clenched them. The big brown teapot chuckled as it filled. She imagined the tea in her mouth, and her insides twitched with surprise. Shirley rolled to the edge of the bed and let one leg drape down to the floor. Her tummy pressed the mattress, and her face sank into the pillow. They had hugged properly yesterday, hugged hard. She'd actually pressed against his ribs and kissed, and he wasn't even a boyfriend. Hadn't been anyway. Shirley would start her apprenticeship at Pasco Trucking this summer, where college had already sent her for a week's work experience. And yesterday at college, when she did her last written exam and strolled out, there was Mickey Ferris, already finished and killing time at the big double door of the automotive workshop. Mickey had suggested a beer at the Huntsman, not the sports bar, the music lounge upstairs. And Shirley had said, why not? What the hell? She had nothing special to do, and so they headed out, both grinning like idiots. Now Shirley kept her morning eyes closed, holding onto the rim of retreating sleep, and her thoughts drifted sideways to the racks of reconditioned gearboxes and axles that waited for her at Pasco's Trucking. Damn it, she could fit them all, mate them all together, firm, no gaps or anything, joining things. At college, where Mickey had barely passed automotive and had played more than he studied, Shirley had the second highest grade in the transmission course. In the college workshop last week, as she assembled a gear set, Mickey gave her baggy overalls a sharp burst from the compressed air hose, and she swung at him. Tough guy, eh? I'll give you tough guy. She had gripped a handful of his wiry hair and pushed his head back and forth. Then, aware of the sinews in his bare neck, she let go and turned back to the gears. A glance showed Mickey scampering down the aisle, looking like a cheeky Jack Russell. And if he'd had a tail, well, never mind. Shirley inhaled the cool scent of dormant machinery. She feasted her eyes on the oily gleam from the bundles of steel gear wheels, whose thick teeth nested perfectly together inside the massive casing. She bolted back the inspection cover, and a hand went instinctively to pat the rough cast exterior of the transmission. It lay placidly in the canvas cradle of a hydraulic jack. With nobody looking, Shirley patted it again before pumping the gearbox upwards to clinch it to the engine. On that first work experience day at Pasco Trucking earlier in the term, she had looked eagerly into the tool crib and touched the racks of clutch linings, the trays of hex head bolts, the curved fingers of a selector fork, the jewelry of gearbox assembly, and had shivered in her overalls. Two of the safety visors were hung the wrong way round on their hooks, and she'd reached up to correct them. They had hugged properly last night, she and Mickey Ferris. At the Huntsman upstairs, Shirley chatted about how her mum drove bus, town and rural routes, had driven buses for years, since the days before power steering, and how Shirley had sometimes ridden along and admired her mum's uniformed arm grabbing gears. A forward push for first gear and a very long reach across to third. No wonder the drivers had been bribing the mechanic to put a bend in the gear levers. 6-cylinder Gardner diesels in those new FK3 buses. Shirley told Mickey what the driver said FK stood for, just to watch his reaction. Mickey talked to his beer about his moonlighting job, fixing his neighbour's Ford Anglia. A good gearbox in the Anglia, easy peasy to work on. Mickey had awful grades on the transmission course, but Shirley listened anyway, and then told him how she used to go with her Uncle Gobbo to the jalopy races, outlaw races in farmers' fields. Her uncle's name was Gordon, but everyone called him Gobbo, especially at the races, helping Uncle Gobbo keep his Anglia running. Mickey nodded eagerly. Unbreakable gearbox, the Anglia, well-spaced ratios too. The click and slide of billiard balls coming from the pool room sent Shirley's thoughts to the strange weight and slide of ball bearings as they rolled in their lubricant inside the crankcase of a small motor she had rebuilt at college. She had grasped the casing firmly and made the bearings roll like a gyroscope. They were like pearls, she thought, eggs even. Shirley poked a coaster around the wet tabletop and thought how Mickey's knuckles were ball joints that needed some realigning. Sorry, Mickey, what did you say? Behind Mickey's tousled head, the band was setting up, and the doorman was moving chairs and tables away from the edge of the stage. Shirley sat tight and listened to Mickey's rambling. He was kind of cute. They ran out of words. Then at last Mickey took a breath and looked her right in the eyes, which he never usually did, and blurted, I'm glad you like Ford Anglias, and leaned clumsily across the tabletop, and Shirley in surprise accelerated to meet him, and they crashed lips and lit up the room. A proper hug, a new body shape. He felt bonier than her mum and dad or her friend Becky. Mind you, parents didn't hug up close with ribs and hips and everything squishing. She had stood up, and under the doorman's disapproving frown, her arms had gone right round Mickey from both sides. He was so new. His hair and bristly neck smelled like a horse, that one in the paddock at the back of her dad's gas station. Shirley had breathed Mickey's neck and tucked her chin hard over his shoulder, and the pub threw them out, but what the hell. Shirley was fully awake. She pushed her stomach hard into the mattress, levered herself up and out and onto the soft rectangle of rug, and tiptoed barefoot to the bathroom. 12 steps to the bathroom, exactly 12 and no cheating. Her last step landed her warm big toe on the very edge of the bathroom linoleum. Closing the door quietly behind her, she slid the cool brass deadbolt to lock it, shivering a bit, and thought about hot sweet tea inside her. The end. Baffled them.
Thank you, David. That was great. I love that flashback of that kiss. That was classic. Yeah, beautiful. Taking advantage of your history with were these two of your students perhaps that you're writing about here? No, this is just
No.
Okay. Okay.
One of it, I'll tell you two sources possibly, but it wasn't deliberate. But BC Transit in Vancouver, where the bus garage is, one of the people who repairs the transmission is a young woman whose father worked there, and she's doing it. And the other one was that at the Indianapolis 500, there's a woman called Anna Chatton who builds gearboxes, and people say, "Can I get Anna on my team?" Because Anna does the gear, so something like that. That, and of course, sex is what really this is really about. As we all now know, this is about sex.
Beautiful. Okay, I've been muted there for a moment. All right, Char, I see you in the window. Do you need to say something?
Oh, thank you, Derek. Oh, what a great evening we're having. And we've got some time zone logistics, which I think is going really, really well. So thank you, everyone. What we're doing right now is Yvonne, our feature number 2, needs to slip out. They have a long drive tonight. And we want to just take a moment because she's got her books here. And she wanted, a few people are asking to get the books, and we don't want to disrupt the rest of the readers. And also Jen from Ontario sent out a shout out to Yvonne. So our feature number 1 and 2 from 3 different time zones are reaching out to one another. So it's really quite fun. So if you'd indulge us, and thank you, David, and if you indulge us, we'll just take 2 minutes here to do a little bit of paperwork, but please, everyone unmute and chat, and we'll just be a moment here.
Sounds good, Sharon. Just let us know when things are ready to roll again, and we'll get started. All good. All good. Yeah. So David and Kathy, you think you'll make it over to Char's again one of these days? Come for a live show? In between the waves here, we better get it in because you never know how long the opening's going to last, right? Yeah.
It's a hard bit, isn't it?
We think Char's is wonderful.
Oh yeah,
And
Char's is great.
And Char is a heroine with an E on the end.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, I have recommended it
Yeah, good.
so much.
Yeah. How's your book coming, David?
I'm just tinkering. I so admire the Broughton Archipelago life, because the willpower of developing this slowly is something I wish I had that. know, so I think I must be on cocaine or something. I don't.
No, not at all, David. It's because you're a short story writer rather than a novelist, right? And short stories, they can't take too long. They gotta get on there, get on that train pretty fast. So it makes sense to me. All right. Herb, did you get the message I sent there? That I've got you down to be reading after Pat Buckner there.
Yeah, I did see that. I don't know where we are in advance of that now. Like how many more to go? So we've got Sharon, Robert, and Joe, and then you. So there'll be four open micers before you, about 20 minutes. Is that going to be problematic? We can always slip you in earlier if you need to read sooner. No, I'm good.
Okay. All right. Sounds good.
Hoping everybody hangs on to the end of this wonderful show.
Yeah. Well, I think so far so good. I think the level of entertainment has been high enough. I don't think anybody's moving too fast.
Yeah, it's been an entertaining
while we
night.
have a little break, I'll mention one event that's coming up. I put a post a couple of minutes ago in the Electric Mermaid group on Facebook, but it's coming up on Saturday. And Penn Kemp and Rico Satoski, the Owen Sound Poet Laureate, they've kind of teamed up to produce a book, and there is an online event in connection with it. It all has to do with the situation in Ukraine. Poets in response to peril, and I think the book is poems in response to peril. But Saturday, 11 a.m. Pacific time, you'll see the link in the Facebook group. It's an incredible lineup of poets. Like when you look at the names, you'll like Susan McCaslin's in there, and Penn is there, and there's a whole pile of other people, and I'm in there, and it would be worth tuning in just for that. And there will be information on the book, but it's $25 and it's like 100 pages. It's a pretty serious book. 48 different poets have contributed to the book. So
wonderful.
Yeah, so you have a look at that, and you can tune into the event. And if anybody is just interested in the book, then send me a message or something, and I can get it routed. I'm in contact with them.
All right, I'm definitely up for a copy. So
yeah, send me a note and remind me, and I'll get the info routed.
Sounds good.
And we'll get you set up.
Perfect.
Derek.
Perfect. No, that's awesome. All right. Oh yeah, April features are, I see Jackie's posted in the chat there, Leslie Ann Gentile, and some guy named Derek Hanebury is going to be a feature there too, apparently. I don't know. Heard a rumor he's got a new book coming out, but we'll see what happens. Actually, I'm pretty sure it should be out by then. It's supposed to be April 12th. It's hitting the brick, so we'll see. But that one will be Wednesday, April 27th for the next one. All right. And we got somebody coming.
Thank you for that, Derek. We're ready to go.
Beautiful. All right. Now, yes, we have Sharon Saunders up at the open mic in Char's or Port Alberni. Sharon, can you hear me okay? All right. And what are you going to share with us tonight, Sharon?
This is my very first time presenting anything live. So you're going to get what you get.
All right. That's all we want.
This is so far out of my comfort zone. I am a brand new author. I'm local to the Port Alberni area. Previously, before writing, I started writing 2 or 3 years ago. And I guess, you know how family always puts expectations on you. They always expect you to do, be the doctor, be the lawyer, be all these other things. And I realized that I never had anything for myself. And so I decided to reclaim some of my identity in the form of the written word. And the first thing that came out actually was a a science fiction novel, but it was so horribly bad, it was not worth publishing. And so I went with something a little lighter hearted. And the book itself is called Houston in September, and it is driven from a soldier that I saw in the Houston airport when I was traveling there to meet girlfriends. I'll read you a few pages of it, and I'll let it be at that. Welcome to Texas. Amelia Patrick removed her rose-rimmed reading glasses and flung them carelessly onto the fold-out tray in front of her, mildly shocked at the clatter as their frames struck the cheap plastic. What a steaming pantload with handshake business deals stubbornly sticking to one product line. The man has zero business sense. With a hand at her neck, she massaged the knot of tension that had accumulated during the 5-hour flight. In the same row, 2 chairs to her right, a triangular-faced man with dark brown hair and hazel eyes jolted awake. His movements shaking the row of seating they shared. "You're staring, aren't you? How much longer?" he said from under his sleep mask. Amelia considered not answering, but Danny had an uncanny knack for knowing when her eyes were on him, even when he slept. 30 minutes or so. "What's wrong?" "Well, aside from the looking at your hideous mask with eyeballs and lashes for the last 5 hours, I need a vacation." She shut the lid of her laptop. "I have 0 figs to give. I'm 2 milliseconds away from sending off an email to the chief executive officer of Hex Holdings to ask if he purchased his MBA for $29.95. You do realize the saying is," Danny halted mid-sentence. "What? Miss Neurotic needs a vacay? Hold me, Mrs. Patrick. I must be dreaming." He sat up and repositioned himself, pulling his sleep mask up to his forehead to stare deeply into her smoke-colored, gold-flecked eyes. "Oh, zip it, you dunderhead, you know why." "Sorry, Emmy, it's a good idea. I'll handle the meat and potatoes of Meetingland. You can tan your tootsies or tweak your tassels in Galveston. Lord knows you haven't taken any time to." Letting the sentence fade purposely, he roared and then steepled his fingers, a look of pure devilry stealing across his pointy face. "You look like the love child of Ace Frehley and Tim Curry when you do that. Stop it." She raised a hand to palm his face across the seat. "Don't even think it, Danny Davinsky. I'm not going out to find a man. You're not fun at all, Emmy the neurotic elephant. Nor am I packing my trunk and saying goodbye to my circus." She laughed, thinking of how they'd met 20 years ago at a punk concert. And I'm going to leave it at that. Thanks.
That's awesome. Hey, hang on there. Whoa, don't run away. Too late, she's gone. Okay, I should have reminded her beforehand, but thank you, Sharon. That was wonderful. And I do hope you come back and share some more of that strong work with us. That was great. Beautiful dialogue. Great characters. All right, our next open micer is also there in person at Char's Landing, hopefully making his way up to the microphone right now. There he is, the handsome, the robust, the multi-talented local Port Alberni writer, Robert Gunn. Welcome, neighbor. Good to see you.
Eric, it's quite enough. Very nice to be here, thank you. I'm building to some extent tonight on comments that Yvonne and Jennifer made with regard to family and reconciliation. I am a settler. I am a settler in this country. This is self-evident as soon as I speak. I say this not in some declaration of triumph, but as an honest statement. It is easy for me to say this in Port Alberni, but if I was to say this in Aotearoa, New Zealand, where I was born, I would have the same "but I was born here" reaction to the concept as many Canadians have. I am the product of a long line of settlers, rootless Europeans all. I grew up in Karori, a hilly suburb of New Zealand's capital city, Wellington. The myth, of course, is pretty universal. Heroic white men and women with oxen, axes, and fire clear unowned, unused land and build a replica Victorian society. In fact, in Aotearoa, one English scheme of the time attempted to intentionally and with precision select settlers so as to replicate their stratified, class-defined society as an ideal model for life on the other side of the world. Does this all sound very familiar to us? My forefathers in Aotearoa settled from Scotland, the Gunns, England, Ireland, and Australia. I even have a grandmother scooped up from colonial South Africa by an imperialist Boer War fighting grandfather. Their reasons for settlement vary from economic, Scotland, with 4 brothers arriving over a decade in the 1860s, others for adventure and trade from Ireland via Australia, and another even spreading his word of a Christian God to the Maori. An interesting footnote of all this are the similar timelines of settlement in both Aotearoa and coastal BC. Cook visits, then a period of marine-based exploitation, otters, whales, seals, followed by 20 years of little interest by Europe, then the beginnings of settlement, all a little later here in BC than in New Zealand. All this is well known to anyone familiar with post-contact history of the Alberni Valley. The relative immediacy of this history compared to Eastern Canada has always fascinated me. In 1859, Stamp, representing English investors, made a quick visit here to assess the timberlands, determine a mill site at Wolf Ritual Beach, just down the hill here, then returned to Victoria to make a deal with Governor Douglas for timber concessions. Neither party paid any attention to the presence of New Chandler occupiers or owners, or of their seasonal use of the beach, now Harbour Quay. New Chandler had not been present when Stamp first visited, but were there when he returned in the fall, for obvious reasons. He had the gall to grumble about the need to rebuy the land with a barrel of molasses and a few other trinkets. These first settlers then were actually mill employees who decided to stay when the mill closed in 1864. And it was not until the 1880s that settlers began trickling into the valley in any numbers. 90 years later, 1973, I wandered into the valley to interview for a job with the Tribal Council. At the time, I was in Canada with an assumed name and a fake social insurance number. But thanks to Trudeau, I was able to get legal, and thanks to George Watts, I was now employed. This unlikely opportunity gave me the privilege to get to know some New Chandler people and their lands beside the mountains. I settled here permanently in 1978 after time in the territories in the Skeena. So this personal history makes it easy for me to acknowledge my settler roots and dishonest to try to deny them. But I do understand how uncomfortable it can be for many Canadians who can point to generations of Canadian ancestors to accept this idea of settler settlement. So where does this leave us in the Alberni Valley in 2022? Clearly, senior levels of government need to keep working towards just treaties with those First Nations who choose to go that route. Those nations who do not choose to pursue treaty, need to be supported by the rest of us so they can go on to court or negotiate other arrangements, memorandums and so on in specific areas with participating governments and local authorities. A moment of reflection makes it plain there are plenty of issues where First Nations can feel justifiably angry at past decisions and lack of consultation. Our landfill location, for example, the history of commercial fishery following the allocation of reserves and the implied access of marine resources in perpetuity in place of just amounts of land, only to be progressively excluded from the fishery, or the history of residential schools, just to mention a few of the oh so many injustices. So, however offensive the term settler might be to some of us, at the very least, First Nations deserve our support as they strive for just resolution to their issues and past injustices. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. As Jackie said here, this would make a great newspaper opinion piece, and we had talked about where this could go. That's I think that'd be a great thing to do, to pass that one along to the AV Times. Anyway, we're on to our next open micer. We have Joe Lunchbucket, aka, or I should say Bob Frankow, aka Joe Lunchbucket, and we have to acknowledge that we have an octogenarian standing here before us tonight who just had his 80th birthday not so long ago. So congratulations on that, Bob.
Wait, let's stand. We need to stand.
Yeah, he's getting a local happy birthday from the people there.
Wow.
Congratulations, Bob. That's wonderful, man. I had no idea you were 80. I would have put you at, 79, not 80. But anyway, what are you going to share with us tonight?
Am I the only octogenarian here?
In the room, I don't know about online.
The only one who will admit it.
Yeah, probably.
No, you're not alone, Bob.
There we go. Herb's with you.
Yeah. Okay, here goes. Migrants are dying to come to North America's promised land of milk and money, and most do well, melding into our melting pot. Did our addicts have all the breaks and traded them for that big high, or did they just lose the luck of the genetic draw and use drugs to cure depression because we closed our mental homes? Shall we be our brother's keeper and treat addicts as victims and offer free, safe drug highs? Are they like royalty and parasitize us? Should government's horn of plenty fund insulin and blood thinners for those that aren't self-addicted? One of the reformed alcoholics that preached to us said, "Don't enable drunks. Let them crawl out of the gutter themselves." Many Aboriginals that had no defense against drugs and alcohol moved their tribes away from towns and declared their villages dry and policed it. Should we adopt Stalin's Siberian "you work, you eat" motto and resurrect workhouses so the homeless campers that never pay park fees replace imported foreign farm labor? England colonized Australia with prison inmates. Castro emptied Cuba's jails and let his people go to Florida, where they competed with the mafia. Will remote islands and habitable planets become our dumping ground for societies deemed undesirables, just as they were for lepers? Okay, that's one sad story. Here's another one here. My friend either dearly departed a year ago or just suffered a virtual death because Facebook still sends greetings to wish him a happy birthday. Since it's almost Easter, is it possible he's been resurrected, or will we all be immortalized on the internet?
Thank you, Bob. And I think I might have got it wrong. I think he might be 82, not 80. This what Carl's telling me in the chat. So, all right. Congratulations on the birthday at any rate. Okay. And who we got next here? I've got Pat Buckner coming to us from Powell River. There you are, Pat. How are you doing, man?
I'm doing fine.
Good, good. Thank you for hanging in with us tonight. And I'll turn the floor over to you.
Okay. Well, back in 1984, I was living in Yellowknife, and I traveled down to BC to participate in something that used to be going on here called the Northern BC Coffee House Circuit. Started up in Prince George, and you traveled all the way west over to what was then the Queen Charlotte's, and this is a story about 2 days in Haida Gwaii. In October 1984, I walk on the ferry in Prince Rupert to what was then known as the Queen Charlotte Islands. The weather is clear, unusual in these parts, and the ferry pitches from side to side as we cross Hecate Strait. As I struggle to keep my balance, someone remarks about how calm the crossing is today. My billet meets me at the terminal at Skidegate, and we drive up island to his 100-year-old log house on the banks of the Tallel River. David, An American draft dodger, his wife, and their 7 children arrived several years earlier, lived and foraged for food on the beach for 2 years, a testament to the bountifulness of these northern islands. I know little about this place except that it rains a lot and is the traditional home of the Haida. Most of what I know was learned from an illustrated book I bought as a child called This is Haida. The fantastic carvings and art fascinated me, but what really caught my attention was a striking photograph of a giant golden spruce tree, Kidkayas, that grew along the banks of the Yacqueline River, close to where I was staying. Do you know how to get to the golden spruce? I asked David. He nods and shrugs. Could you show me? I guess. We hike through the rainforest, trees so tall they block most of the sunlight. Huge ferns cover the ground, the trail well marked and easy to follow. At one point, David stops, heads off into the forest, and breaks off a gigantic orange bracken from the trunk of a fallen tree. Chicken of the woods, he says, smiling as he stuffs the giant fungus into his backpack. Later, this will be our dinner's main course. A light rain begins as we reach a clearing at the edge of a river. I look across at a wall of giant trees. How much further? What's right there, he says, pointing. I see nothing except a green wall of trees. Where? Right there. I look where he points, but no single tree rises above the others like in the picture in my book, just a stand of identical trees. One perhaps is a shade lighter than the others, but nothing that stands out. Can't you see it? My color blindness prevents me from distinguishing the golden branches from those of the other trees. I stand in the spot for a moment, somewhat disappointed, and we head home. 14 years later, Grant Hadwin, an unemployed forest ranger, swims across that river with a chainsaw and makes a series of cuts at the base of the golden spruce. A powerful gust of wind fells the tree a few months later. Hadwin releases a letter explaining he was protesting the so-called extremists causing harm to the planet. After his arrest, but before his court appearance, he announces he intends to kayak Hecate Strait. Several months later, people find his wrecked kayak, but not his body. The next morning, I sit alone on the banks of the Tallel River. A canopy of trees forms a natural amphitheater that reflects and amplifies the sound of my guitar. The water, deep green, almost black. Upstream, at a bend in the river, sits a well-kept log house. Many years later, I find out the cabin belongs to the author and artist James Houston. In his memoir, Hideaway, Houston writes about his time in Tallel. Although he spent much of his life in the Eastern Arctic and introduced printmaking to the Inuit in Cape Dorset, he wintered in Tallel. Later that day, I hiked to the beach through a moss-covered meadow of tall, drooping ferns, fronds laden with dew. A long, curving crescent of white sand stretches from one horizon to the other. A few leaning trees bend towards the calm waters. The sea and sky dissolve into a gray fog. Low-hanging clouds brush the treetops. I sit on the sand at the water's edge. A slow swoosh of wings. A pair of ravens lumber by. Behind me, winter storms have piled the sand into a series of drifts. I think about David, his wife, and their 7 kids foraging for 2 years on this beach. I sense something behind me. I turn. A woman with long blonde hair rides a white horse. I turn away, then look again. The woman and the horse have vanished. I can't have imagined her. As I watch, she emerges from behind a dune, then gallops down the beach and disappears.
Wow, beautiful. Thank you. Who needs psilocybin mushrooms up there when you have those kinds of images showing up? That's wonderful.
Exactly.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Pat.
Hey, thanks.
Appreciate that. All right, and our last open micer for tonight, coming to us from Maple Ridge, is Herb Bryce. Wonderful to have you here again, Herb, and glad you've come back to join us again, and hopefully you can make it again next month. The floor is all yours, sir.
Thank you very much. Your voice broke up, and I hope mine isn't, because I did get a message that I am having low resolution for some reason. So am I coming over?
Absolutely fine from here, yeah.
Thank you. Silence has no echo, nor any rippling effect. Lucille A. LaRoche to Nancy Ndeki, in a scintillating discussion of Lucille's post of Maya Angelou's poem, Phenomenal Woman, on January 11, 2022. Well, a gift of a title like that, I had to, of course, do a writing on it. And I did that, and I posted it recently, and I got phenomenal response on my Facebook blog. So here's for you. Silence has no echo. Silence is a cave sheltered from the breeze, hiding from the rumor, hiding from the tease. Silence is the sound of fear. Silence stifles every tear. Silence hides from bullies where no one else can hear. Silence has no echo. Silence sends no ripple out. Silence has its feeling in, holds its feeling in. No one hears that secret thought. No one reacts to its needful call. No one floods the schoolyard hall. No one tries to stop the slap. No one bites his tongue or contradicts the hurtful verbal smear. For silence sends no echo out, no ripple sent to reveal the doubt. Silence launches no defense. Silence wields no clout. There is no echo to that silent prayer. There's no ripple to spread the word of fear. Silent in its cave, the echo huddles down, stifles its own voice, and life never breathes fresh air. No one witnesses the fall of a stressed out tear. Life wilts in airless cave, hope never does appear. Silence needs a voice, the truth of that is plain. We need to learn to read the silent braille. We need to lure the silence out from its silence cave. We need to hear that silent echo send the ripples out. For healing love, to hear that call, scream it out. Cave life is isolation, and isolation writes upon its own cave wall. And nobody ever sees it till long after they are gone. For silence sends out no echo, silence sends no ripple out. To meet the breaking of the dawn, where helping hands await, to erase that killing hate, to free the silence from its chains. For silence has no song, and silence makes no tune. Silence has no echo, silence sends no ripple out. Silence must be broken to let the prisoner out. Thank you so much, dedicated to all the lonely people.
Beautiful, beautiful, Herb. That was sweet. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. I almost forgot Jackie tonight. Jackie, I'm so sorry. you weren't on the list. And I was thankfully reminded that, yes, indeed, you're on the lineup, and I'm so glad that you're there in person. You're going to share something with us. Is this going to come from your book, from tweets?
Yeah, this one comes from my first book, one of my first books anyway, Tweets from the Trenches, Little True Stories of Life and Death on the Western Front. And although this one was self-published, I started my own self-publishing, effort before I got published by a professional publishing house. I'm very pleased to say that it's in a lot of libraries, and I want to remind people with books that are in libraries, if your book is in libraries, don't forget to register. It's the open registration point right now to register your book to get royalties based on library usage. So that's just a Word to the wise. All right. So in this book, it was sort of poetry and prose, and all about World War I, of course. And I'm very excited to say my son and I are planning on going to Vimy and Ypres in the fall. So I'm super excited about getting back there. And both of my grandfathers were in World War I. Okay, my grandfather was Blackjack, and the first piece in this is called Dobsy and the SRD. Where's the rum, Dobsy? Where's the SRD, pal? I wish I could ask Dobbs where the rum is. He was toting the section's ration of supply reserve depot, service rum diluted, seldom reaches destination, soon runs dry. 1/16 of a pint per man per day, to be dispensed at the front daily as at stand 2. When he was hit, and that was the last we saw of it, wherever you are, Dobsy, God love you, don't go to hell. It's sure to be overrun with rats, lice, and a Tommy at every fire to keep Fritzy sizzling. Letter home on drink, and this is from Lawrence Earl Johns. He was from Elamville, Ontario, and he died on September 12, 1917. I'm glad to say that I have quit drinking water since I have left the trenches where we get a little rum. We get good tea 3 times a day. The water is not much good. A person cannot say he drinks rum. You do not get a drink, only a swallow. It will strangle you quicker than white wine vinegar if you go to take a breath between the 2 little swallows while your wind is gone for the time being. But it cheers one up wonderfully after being up all night with nothing to eat, to see the sergeant coming up the trench with the rum in a water bottle under his arm. We are always willing to wait a few minutes longer to get our issue. If you ever hear anybody say that they think it's a shame that the soldiers are given rum, why, just tell them a thing or two from me. I bet they don't have any boys over here. They don't know what conditions we have to live over here. And then the last one is based on a letter that was written by a fellow named Morris, and he came back and lived in the Citadel Bell Tower with his dad in Halifax and died very young. Fetch me the SRD. Fetch me the SRD, boys. Hand me the stoneware jug, a swig of service rum diluted for us. After all them trenches we dug, slogging through the trenches, wishing we were home in the company of the SRD, we're never alone. They say SRD stands for something else, as it seldom reaches destination. It's SRD for me, boys. Just give me my fair ration. It's back to Canada for those of us left, our days as soldiers all through. I'm home with my folks and some bad memories. I'll no be forgetting you. Them were good old days as I've missed, though I didn't think so then. I'll miss it enough just to re-enlist for SRD in the company of fighting men. So hoist a pint for me, boys, when you talk about days of old, and when we gave Fritzy hell and dug trenches so well, and survived in those fields of gold. That's it. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jackie. Yeah, I'm sure everybody knowing that the rum was coming, especially at the when they first I forget what they call it when they first line up. Yeah. But I'm sure nobody was late for that one if they knew the rum was coming. That was one way to make sure, right? Nobody was going to desert at that moment.
They wonder why so many fellows came back. Like one of my grandfathers was basically an alcoholic when he came back, and after being dosed that way twice daily, it was it felt like at the time the only way they could get through a day in the trenches, but it wasn't really that great for them. Yep.
No, hard. Very hard. Anyway, thank you so much. That was it was wonderful to hear another piece of tweets. Great book. So can you remind us who the other reader is for our feature next month? I know I'm going to be featured, and
Leslie Ann Gentile. Wonderful, wonderful author, new book. I believe it might be her first book, and I believe she is of First Nations extraction. So really thrilling to have her with us. And you, of course, congratulations on, it's not something completely different. Tell me the name of the book again.
Something else altogether.
All right, I was close. All right, okay, that's great. That'll be great. I'm really glad that you're joining us.
Awesome. Looking forward to it. So thank you, Jackie, for all you do as artistic director. I'm going to wind it up for the night now. We appreciate all that you do, all the press releases and lining up these diverse writers from all across the country and beyond. So much appreciated. David, you wanted to say something?
Just the wonderful thing about this or any reading group is that we're all who we are, and if anyone was walking down the street, nobody would know that any one of us was a writer. Now, some people you can tell what they are, but writers you don't, and so it's kind of encouraging because I can look around and I think that person could be a writer. I don't know, but it could be. It's possible. And I once asked Karen Kane, the ballerina. I said, can you tell if you're in the street or in the market or walking up and down the stairs, can you tell if somebody else is a dancer? And she says, yeah, right away. It's obvious to me. I thought, well, this is weird because there's no way of looking at a human being and saying they're a writer. So it's very, very valuable to me to be in these groups because it's kind of encouraging. You think, wow, they could be a writer, and everyone has this wonderful story. So thank you for that.
Absolutely, thank you.
That is so true. But then there's Pat. He's also a writer, but also a musician.
Yeah.
Oh, you can tell what that one is.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, as always, it is so great to have community when your writer is such a solitary thing, and we found it here, I think, and it's precious, and we will continue to nurture it for as long as we can. Absolutely. All right, so I also want to say big thank you to Char at Char's Landing, and remind you that e-transfer at charslanding.com. Herb, did you want to say something, or were you just waving goodbye?
No, I was wondering, are you going to stay on Zoom?
We are going to offer it on Zoom as well as face-to-face. So you're more than welcome to join us next month, and we're going to carry that on. And we want to do this kind of hybrid because it gives us this, richness, this chance to extend anywhere in the world, basically, and pull people in. I think it just makes the whole experience so much richer. So we would hate to close that part down, as long as Char's got the strength and the wherewithal to carry on. She must be a nervous wreck.
There's a standing invitation to come on over, and Char has a really lovely hostel here. You're still doing the hostel, right, Char? Yeah, she's got a really lovely hostel here. It's not expensive to stay, and of course, it's right in the Arts District and a lot to visit. So if you're part of our community and you want to come do the thing in person, now that the rules are going to be relaxing and everything, it might be a time to come and plan to be with us on the last Wednesday of the month. Month, we'll be
Herb,
here.
if you want to come over, I will buy you a beer. At Char's Landing.
I'll buy you one too.
I'll buy you one too, Herb. What the hell? We'll just pour you to bed later on.
Thank you.
Yeah. Anyway, and thank you also to Karl, our moderator, who was a little handicapped tonight, but you seem to keep everything going anyway, Karl. Thank you so much.
You're welcome, and thank you to Derek.
Thank you, Derek. Woo!
Thank you, Derek.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
And to Jennifer for staying on so late where she is. Thank you, Jennifer, for being on time and very dedicated to read to us. We hope to see you in person one day too.
Maybe one day. Meantime, it's bedtime.
Not by your time.
Yeah. You never know what will happen. Maybe you'll be invited out here to do a reading in Vancouver, and you just hop the boat across.
There you go. You never know.
Things happen. Yeah.
And when you do come, I will buy you a drink, whatever you drink.
All right. So thank you to all of our open micers as well as our two featured readers tonight. I think it was a really, really broad range of writing, and I enjoyed every bit of it. It was soul food tonight there, I think, for sure. So keep on writing, everybody, and stay safe, stay healthy, and keep this fourth wave or whatever it is in abatement, and we will carry on, and look forward to seeing everybody next month on
April the 27th.
April 27th. Thank you very much, Carl. Where would I be without you? Okay.
Good night,
Take care.
all.
Good night.
Bye-bye.
Good night. Good night, John Boy.
Hi, all.
Yeah.
Night, Jackie.
Yeah, good night, Jackie.
Thank you, Derek. That was a really nice night.
Yeah, you're most welcome, Char.
Well, I look forward to seeing you here
can't
on
wait.
stage. And
I can't wait. Yeah.
and bring your laptop, and I'll put a microphone next to you. Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Great.
so we can do a hybrid there, and then I'll just go to the mic when I read, and otherwise just do it from my laptop, eh?
Right. Yeah. We did it one time, I think, and I'm in much better practice now, so I know what to do.
Just make sure your computer's working before you come.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm going to be servicing some computers now. It was kind of a fun start, but anyways, have a great month, Garrett. Thanks again.
All right. Okay. You're welcome. We'll see you next month, and I'll come early so we can get things set up around 5.
Please. Yeah, please. Good. Excellent.
Okay. Take care and good night, all.